The silence in the council chamber was the kind that made even the oldest species uncomfortable. Ambassador Chen stood at the human podium, her hands clasped behind her back, her face showing nothing. Around her, the circular chamber stretched upward like the inside of a massive tower. 12 species sat in their designated sections, each area designed for their specific biology. The Vrax occupied the largest section, their crystalline bodies reflecting the blue light of the chamber. The insectoid Clith clicked and buzzed in their pressurized zone. The aquatic Morpheus floated in their water columns, tentacles drifting lazily. Chen had been Earth's representative for 8 years. She had negotiated trade agreements, settled disputes over mining rights, and once spent 6 months mediating a territorial disagreement between the Clith and the Zephrani. She was good at her job. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for 300 years, and in that time, humans had earned a reputation. They were clever engineers, reliable traders, good diplomats. They asked questions, learned fast, and adapted to almost any situation. But they were not warriors. Everyone knew that. High Arbiter Zexthor, a Vrax who had led the council for 40 years, raised one of his forearms. The chamber's translation matrix hummed, converting his crystalline resonance into words every species could understand. Ambassador Chen, humanity has violated the Sacred Accord. Article 17. Section 9 clearly states that no species may establish permanent colonies in disputed territories without council approval. Your species has built a settlement in the Outer Veil region. This region is disputed. You did not seek approval. Therefore, you have broken our most fundamental law. Chen's jaw tightened slightly. Anyone who knew humans would have recognized the sign. But the council members had little experience with human body language. High Arbiter, with respect, the Outer Veil region has not been disputed for 70 years. The last claim was filed by the Theros Empire and withdrawn in 2255. We followed all protocols. We surveyed the system for 5 years. We filed our intent to colonize in 2258. We waited the required 2 years for objections. None came. Irrelevant. The word came from War Master Krelnak, the military commander of the Vrax Collective. His crystalline form was darker than the High Arbiter's, shot through with veins of deep red. The Sacred Accord is clear. When the Council determines a violation has occurred, the violating species must accept judgment. This is not a debate. Chen's hands tightened behind her back. War Master, 12,000 human civilians live on New Terra. Families, children, scientists. They have built homes, farms, research stations. They have committed no crime. They exist in violation of council law, Krelnak said. His voice carried no emotion. The Vrax were not cruel by nature, but they were absolute in their adherence to rules and hierarchy. To them, law was sacred. The correction fleet was dispatched 6 days ago. It will arrive at the illegal colony in 40 hours. The humans there will be given 48 hours to evacuate. Any structures will be dismantled. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force. The words hit Chen like physical blows. She had known this meeting would be difficult. The council had summoned her with only 12 hours' notice. She had suspected they would demand the colony be abandoned or relocated. But this, a military fleet? Already dispatched? You sent warships before even informing us? Her voice remained steady, but something in her tone made several council members shift in their seats. The council does not require permission from individual species to enforce its laws, High Arbiter Zexthor said. Ambassador Chen, humanity has been a valued member of our community. You have contributed much, but you must understand, the Sacred Accord is what allows 400 species to coexist peacefully. If we allow one species to violate it without consequence, the entire structure collapses. Chen looked around the chamber. Most of the council representatives would not meet her eyes. The Clith representative clicked nervously. The Morpheus ambassador's tentacles had gone very still. Only the Theros elder, a being so old its scales had turned to white crystal, watched her with what might have been sympathy. Or perhaps just curiosity. How many ships? Chen asked quietly. Krelnak's crystals chimed with what might have been satisfaction. 600 Vrax warships. More than sufficient for a peaceful dismantling operation. We anticipate no resistance. Humans are not a military species. There it was. The assumption that had defined humanity's place in the galaxy for 3 centuries. Humans were clever, yes. Resourceful, certainly. But dangerous? No, humanity had no great battle fleet. They had fought no wars since joining the galactic community. Their ships were cargo haulers, passenger liners, research vessels, and a small number of patrol craft that dealt with pirates and smugglers. The galaxy knew human history, of course. Everyone who joined the council had their past examined. Earth's bloody history was well documented. The world wars, the regional conflicts, the nuclear standoffs, but that was all ancient history. The humans who joined the stars had left that violence behind. They had evolved past it, or so everyone believed. Chen stood silent for a long moment. The chamber waited. Finally she spoke, her voice carefully neutral. High Arbiter, I request an immediate recess. Humanity needs to consult with our government before responding to this situation. Zexthor's crystals flickered with surprise. Usually, when the council issued a judgment, the accused species accepted it immediately. Pleading, negotiating, even protesting loudly, these were all normal responses. But requesting a recess, that was unusual. Very well, the High Arbiter said after a pause. You have 6 hours. Then we reconvene, and you will provide humanity's formal response. Chen bowed slightly, a gesture of respect she had learned decades ago. Then she turned and walked out of the chamber. Her stride was measured, professional. She did not hurry. She did not show fear or anger, but as soon as the chamber doors closed behind her, she ran. Her personal quarters in the council station were small but comfortable. She had decorated them with items from Earth. A painting of the Rocky Mountains, a small bonsai tree, photographs of her family. She ignored all of it now. She went straight to her secure communication terminal and entered a priority code she had hoped never to use. The screen flickered. Then a face appeared, a man in his late 60s with iron-gray hair and sharp eyes. Admiral Sarah Kovacs, humanity's highest-ranking military officer. Technically, she was head of the United Human Space Navy, but that title was mostly ceremonial. The UHN was small, a defense force, nothing more, or that was what the galaxy believed. Ambassador, Kovacs said without preamble, I've been monitoring the council feeds. I heard every word. Chen felt something loosen in her chest. Kovacs already knew. That was good. That saved time. They've already sent the fleet, Admiral. 600 Virax warships. They'll reach New Terra in less than 2 days. I know. Kovacs' face was unreadable. The question is, what do we do about it? Chen sat down heavily. Can we evacuate? 12,000 people in 48 hours? Not possible. We'd need at least a week to evacuate that many civilians safely. We could get maybe 4,000 out in the time we have. The rest, she trailed off. The council expects us to comply, Chen said. They think we're not capable of anything else. Kovacs was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Are you asking me if we can fight? I'm asking if we have any choice. The Admiral leaned back in her chair. Behind her, Chen could see other officers moving urgently through what looked like a command center. That was strange. Kovacs usually took calls from her office. Chen, I need to tell you something. Something that's been classified above your clearance level. Something only about 200 people in all of human space know. She paused. The UHSN is not what the galaxy thinks it is. Chen felt her heart rate increase. What do you mean? 300 years ago, when we joined the galactic community, humanity made a choice. We decided to emphasize trade, science, and diplomacy. We wanted to be seen as valuable, non-threatening partners, and we succeeded. But humanity didn't forget its history, Chen. We didn't forget what we learned in all those wars we fought before we reached the stars. Kovacs touched something off-screen. A new window appeared on Chen's display. Star charts, ship registries, production facilities. The numbers made Chen's eyes widen. For 3 centuries we've been building, Kovacs continued. Quietly, carefully. Every commercial shipyard has a military conversion plan. Every cargo hauler can be retrofitted for combat in weeks. Every deep space station has weapon systems hidden in their infrastructure. We have 387 military installations that aren't on any council registry. We have 4,000 warships in mothballs ready to be activated. 4,000? Chen could barely process it. But the council thinks we have maybe 200 patrol craft. We have 200 active patrol craft, Kovacs corrected. We also have ships the council has never seen. Ship types they don't have classification codes for. Weapon systems based on human history that no other species ever developed, because they never needed them. Chen stared at the data. Why hide all this? Because peaceful species are underestimated, Ambassador. And underestimation is an advantage. We hoped we'd never need this. We've spent 300 years avoiding conflicts, building relationships, proving we could be trusted. But the Council just sent warships to attack human civilians without even giving us a chance to respond. Kovach's voice hardened. That changes everything. What are you going to do? Chen asked, though she thought she already knew the answer. I'm activating Protocol Omega. Full military mobilization. Every reserve unit, every mothballed ship, every hidden installation. The Vrax fleet is going to reach New Terra and find out that humans remember how to fight. She paused. But I need you to buy me time. Stay at the Council. Keep them talking. Make them think we're negotiating, planning to comply. I need 36 hours. Chen nodded slowly. Her hands had stopped shaking. I can do that. Admiral, what should I tell them when the recess ends? Kovach smiled, and it was not a comforting expression. Tell them humanity is considering their demands carefully. Tell them we want peace. Tell them whatever you need to tell them to keep them calm. Her smile faded. Because in 36 hours the galaxy is going to learn something it should have known all along. Humans are peaceful, but peaceful and harmless are not the same thing. The communication ended. Chen sat alone in her quarters, staring at the blank screen. Outside her window she could see the stars. Somewhere out there her people were in danger. Somewhere out there the Vrax fleet was approaching, confident in their power, secure in their assumptions. They had no idea what was coming. Chen stood up and began preparing for the reconvened session. She would play her part. She would be the reasonable diplomat, the concerned ambassador seeking common ground. She would give the military the time they needed. And then the galaxy would learn what humanity had been hiding for 300 years. The wolves had been sleeping, but now they were awake. General Marcus Webb stood in front of the largest tactical display in human space. The War Room, they called it, though it had not been used for its intended purpose in 287 years. The room was deep beneath the surface of Luna, Earth's moon, protected by 300 meters of rock and military-grade shielding. The display showed the entire human territory, 73 star systems, 214 inhabited worlds and stations, thousands of ships moving along established trade routes, and now, one Vrax fleet approaching New Terra like a knife aimed at humanity's throat. Status report, Webb said. His voice was rough, worn by age and too many years of service. He was 73 years old. He had joined the UHSN 60 years ago, when humanity still remembered what war meant. He had trained for battles that never came. He had commanded fleets that never fired a shot in anger. He had wondered sometimes if humanity had truly evolved past its violent nature, or if they had simply been lucky enough to avoid testing it. Now he would find out. Commander Rachel Torres looked up from her console. She was young, only 35, but she had been raised in the military tradition. Her grandfather had fought in the last Earth conflict before unification. Her father had been one of the architects of Protocol Omega. She knew what was coming. Admiral Kovach reports Protocol Omega is in effect. All reserve units are mobilizing. Mothball facilities are beginning reactivation sequences. We're getting response confirmations from 341 hidden installations. She paused. General, the Council doesn't know about any of this. When they find out, it will be too late to matter, Webb interrupted. He zoomed the display in on New Terra. The colony world was small, barely 5 million square kilometers of habitable land. But it was Earth-like in ways few worlds were. Blue oceans, green forests. The colonists had worked for 8 years to build something beautiful there. What's the status of the evacuation? Transport ships are inbound, but you were right. We can't get everyone out in time. Governor Reeves estimates 4,000 evacuees maximum. Priority given to children and medical cases. Torres's jaw tightened. 8,000 colonists are refusing to leave. Webb was not surprised. He had read the reports from New Terra. The colonists were not soldiers, but they were human. And humans had a long history of refusing to abandon their homes. Have they been informed of the risks? Yes, sir. Governor Reeves made it clear. The Vrax fleet is military grade. They have the firepower to level every structure on the planet if they choose to. The colonists know this. They don't care. Webb nodded slowly. Then we honor their choice. What assets do we have in the New Terra system? Currently, 3 frigates, the Defiant, Resilient, and Unyielding. Patrol craft officially. Light weapons, minimal armor. Against 600 Vrax warship. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. And unofficially? Webb asked. Torres allowed herself a small smile. Unofficially, sir. Those 3 ships have been refitted with some very interesting technology. Hunter-killer configurations, electronic warfare suites, and their cargo holds are full of some very creative ordnance. Good. Webb turned to another officer. Commander Park, what's our intelligence on Vrak's military doctrine? Commander James Park had been studying alien military systems for 30 years. He was humanity's foremost expert on galactic warfare, or rather the lack thereof. Most species in the galactic community had not fought a real war in centuries. Their military forces were for show, for ceremonial purposes, for policing. They had forgotten what actual combat looked like. Vrak's tactics are based on overwhelming force and rigid formation, Park said. They fight in grid patterns, maximizing overlapping fields of fire. It's mathematically optimal in theory, but it requires constant communication and coordination. Break their formation, disrupt their communications, and they become vulnerable. He pulled up tactical displays. They've fought pirates and dealt with minor skirmishes between species. They've never faced an enemy that actively tries to outsmart them. They've certainly never faced an enemy willing to use asymmetric warfare. Webb studied the displays. They think this is going to be a peacekeeping operation. They expect token resistance at most. They're bringing 600 ships because it sends a message, not because they think they need them. Exactly, sir, Park confirmed. Their formation will be designed for intimidation, not combat readiness. They'll approach New Terra in a standard blockade. Configuration: impressive, overwhelming, completely vulnerable to unconventional tactics. Then we'll give them something unconventional. Webb turned back to the main display. Torres, I want the defiant, resilient, and unyielding to prepare for combat operations. They're not to engage directly. They're to lead the Vraks into a kill zone. What do we have for that? Torres typed rapidly. We deployed autonomous defense platforms 6 months ago. Officially, they're monitoring satellites. Unofficially, they're mobile mine networks. 3,000 units currently dormant and classified as debris. The Vrak sensors will read them as junk until we activate them. And reinforcements? Battle Group Orion is in position, 2 days out at maximum burn. They've been there for a month officially on deep space exercises. She highlighted a region of space near New Terra. 12 heavy cruisers, 38 destroyers, 6 carriers with full fighter complements, all reactivated from mothballs within the last 60 days. All crews are veterans or top academy graduates. In general, they're angry. Everyone in Battle Group Orion volunteered for this. Webb understood. The UHSN might have been ceremonial for nearly 3 centuries, but it had maintained its traditions. Every officer studied military history. They knew what their ancestors had fought for. They understood sacrifice, duty, honor, and now for the first time in their lives they would have a chance to prove that those values still meant something. Good, Webb said. What about the political situation? Admiral Kovach's face appeared on a secondary screen. She was still in her command center on Mars, coordinating the larger mobilization. Ambassador Chen is buying us time, Kovach reported. The council reconvened 4 hours ago. She's giving them a performance for the ages, expressing concern, asking for clarification, requesting detailed information about the evacuation procedures. She's playing the role of the nervous diplomat perfectly. The council thinks humanity is panicking and preparing to comply. How long can she stall? Webb asked. Maybe 12 more hours. After that, they'll get suspicious. But it doesn't matter. By then, the Vrak's fleet will be at New Terra and everything will change. Kovach paused. Marcus, are you sure about this? Once we engage, there's no going back. The galaxy will know what we've been hiding. Some species will see it as a betrayal. The council might fracture. Webb was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the colonists on New Terra. He thought about the 300 years of peace humanity had enjoyed. He thought about the reputation they had built, clever, harmless, friendly humans. And he thought about the 600 Vrak's warships approaching a human world, confident that humans would simply accept whatever judgment was handed down. The council sent warships to attack civilians without even giving us a chance to defend ourselves, Webb said quietly. They assumed we would accept it because we've always been peaceful. They mistook our choice for inability. That ends now. If the council fractures over this, so be it. But humanity will not bow down to threats. Not anymore, Kovach nodded. Then we're committed. Protocol Omega is in full effect. What are your orders? Webb looked at the tactical display one more time. New Terra was a small dot of blue and green in the vast darkness of space. 600 red icons representing the Vrax fleet were approaching steadily, and scattered throughout the system were the tiny markers representing human assets. 3 frigates, 3,000 dormant mines, and 1 battle group waiting just beyond sensor range. "We defend our people," Webb said. "We show the Vrax and the entire galaxy that humanity did not forget how to fight. We just chose not to. There's a difference." He straightened, his old military bearing returning. "And when this is over, when the Vrax fleet is broken and running, I want every species in the galaxy to understand one thing. Peaceful does not mean weak. It means we choose restraint. But if you force our hand, you will learn why humanity survived every predator, every disaster, every enemy on Earth, and made it to the stars anyway." Torres looked up from her console. "General, we're getting reports from across human space. Reservists are flooding recruitment centers. Civilian ships are volunteering for auxiliary duty. People want to help." Webb was not surprised. Humanity had spent 3 centuries as the galaxy's friendly neighbors. They had built a good life. They had raised families, built businesses, created art, explored the universe. They had enjoyed peace. But buried beneath that peaceful civilization was something older. Something that had carried humanity through ice ages and plagues, through wars and disasters, through every challenge evolution had thrown at them. The will to survive, the refusal to surrender, the pack-bonding instinct that made humans defend their own with a ferocity that surprised even themselves. The Vrax were about to discover this the hard way. "Inform Battle Group Orion," Webb ordered. "Prepare for combat operations. Rules of engagement are defensive only. We fire only if fired upon, and we use proportional force. But if the Vrax attack New Terra, if they harm even 1 colonist, then we hit them with everything we have. No holding back." "Yes, sir," Torres said. Webb turned to Park. "I want you to draft a message. It will be broadcast across all council frequencies at the moment of engagement. The galaxy needs to understand why we're doing this." Park nodded. "What should it say, sir?" Webb thought about Ambassador Chen, stalling the council with diplomatic language. He thought about the colonists on New Terra, refusing to abandon their homes. He thought about the Vrax commander, so confident in his fleet's power. "Tell them that humanity has lived by the galaxy's rules for 300 years. We have been good neighbors. We have sought peace. We have contributed to the galactic community in every way we could." He paused. "But when the Council sent warships to attack our civilians without trial, without negotiation, without even the basic respect of talking to us first, they broke those rules. They came to our home. Now they will face us, and they will learn that humans are still the species that climbed from caves to stars. We did not do that by surrendering every time someone threatened us." Park was typing rapidly. "Got it, sir." "Good." Webb looked around the war room. Every officer present was focused, determined. This was the moment they had trained for their entire lives, even if they had hoped it would never come. "Transmit orders to all units. In 36 hours, the Vrax fleet reaches New Terra. In 36 hours, the galaxy learns the truth about humanity. Make sure our people are ready." As the officers dispersed to their tasks, Webb remained at the tactical display. He zoomed in on Earth, barely visible in the center of human space. 300 years ago, humanity had looked at the stars and decided to be explorers, not conquerors. They had chosen peace, but the galaxy had misunderstood. They thought peaceful meant harmless. They thought 3 centuries without war meant humanity had forgotten how to fight. They were about to learn their mistake. The wolves had been sleeping, but now they were awake, and they remembered exactly what their teeth were for. The Vrax fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Terra system, with the precision of a well-practiced military exercise. 600 crystalline warships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls reflecting the light of New Terra's sun like a field of deadly stars. Each ship was a work of art, geometric perfection, covered in energy shields that shimmered like soap bubbles in vacuum. Fleet Commander Zarthok stood in the command center of his flagship, the Eternal Order. He was a veteran of 40 years, though he had never fought in a real war. No one had. The galaxy had been at peace for centuries. His experience came from peacekeeping operations, anti-piracy patrols, and ceremonial displays of force. This mission was supposed to be simple, a show of power. The humans would see his fleet, realize resistance was pointless, and evacuate their illegal colony. Status report. Zarthok commanded. His crystalline voice resonated through the ship's communication system. All ships in position, Commander, his tactical officer reported. Formation integrity is optimal. Shields are at standard levels. No hostile contacts detected. Mom, scan the system. I want to know the location of every human vessel and installation. The sensors swept across the new Terra system. It was a simple star system. One habitable world, 2 gas giants in the outer system, an asteroid belt, and the usual debris of a young solar system. The planet itself appeared on their displays, blue and green and beautiful. Zarthok could see why the humans had wanted it. It looked like their homeworld. Commander, we're detecting 3 vessels in orbit around New Terra. Human frigates. Classification, patrol class. Light armament. They're not moving to intercept. Zarthok nodded. That was expected. 3 patrol boats against 600 warships. The humans would have to be insane to fight. What about the colony? Surface scans show. Commander, this is unusual. We're detecting defensive fortifications around the main settlement. Shield generators. What appear to be weapon emplacements, and the population readings are wrong. Wrong how? The colony was reported to have 12,000 inhabitants. Current scans show approximately 8,000. 4,000 are missing. Zarthok considered this. They've begun evacuating. Good, that shows sense. Open a communication channel to the colony. Let's make this official. The main display flickered. A human face appeared. An older woman with gray hair and tired eyes. Governor Maria Reeves, according to their intelligence files. She had been leading the colony for 6 years. Governor Reeves, Zarthok began, his translator converting his crystalline harmonics into human language. I am Fleet Commander Zarthok of the Vrax Collective. By order of the Galactic Council, you are in violation of the Sacred Accord. This colony must be dismantled. You have 48 hours to complete evacuation. Any who remain after that time will be forcibly removed. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force. Do you understand? Reeves looked at him with an expression he could not read. Humans were strange creatures, soft, emotional, illogical. But she spoke calmly. Commander Zarthok, I understand your position. However, I need you to understand mine. The people of New Terra do not recognize the Council's authority to order us off our legally established colony. We followed all protocols. We violated no laws. The Council's judgment is unjust. Zarthok felt a flicker of irritation. The Council has determined that a violation occurred. This is not a debate. You have 48 hours. And if we refuse? Reeves asked. Then we will remove you by force and dismantle your structures. I have 600 warships, Governor. You have 3 patrol boats. Please do not make this more difficult than it needs to be. Reeves was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Commander, I served in the Human Colonial Defense Force for 20 years before I became a civilian governor. I know what 600 warships can do to a planet. I'm asking you, are you truly prepared to attack civilians over a bureaucratic disagreement? I am prepared to follow the Council's orders, Zarthok replied. As must you. 48 hours, Governor. I suggest you use them wisely. He cut the communication. Behind him, his tactical officer spoke up. Commander, should we move into orbital bombardment position? Not yet. Give them time to realize their situation is hopeless. We'll maintain our formation here. Zarthok settled into his command chair. This would be over in 2 days. The humans would evacuate, they would dismantle the colony, and the Council's authority would be reaffirmed. Simple, clean, exactly as these operations were supposed to go. He had no idea how wrong he was. 36 hours later, Zarthok was growing impatient. The human evacuation was proceeding slowly. Only 1 transport ship had left the system, carrying perhaps 1,000 colonists. The rest remained on the surface, apparently ignoring his deadline. Commander, the deadline expires in 12 hours. His tactical officer reminded him. Should we begin moving into position? Yes, standard blockade formation. Commander. The sensor officer's voice was sharp with alarm. The human patrol ships are moving. Zarthok looked at the tactical display. The 3 small human frigates had left their orbital positions and were accelerating toward his fleet. It was suicide. What were they thinking? Maintain formation, Zarthok ordered. Charge weapons, but do not fire unless they attack first. Let's see what they're trying to do. The 3 human ships approached at high speed, then suddenly broke formation. They scattered in 3 different directions, each one moving erratically. No military vessel should move like that. It was inefficient. Wasteful of fuel, tactically unsound. Commander, they're deploying something. Multiple objects. Sensors reading them as debris, scrap metal? Zarthok watched as the human ships left trails of what appeared to be junk in their wake. Broken hull plates, damaged equipment, even what looked like civilian cargo containers. They're dumping garbage? Analysis suggests, Commander, I don't understand this behavior. Military vessels don't carry debris. The 3 human ships continued their erratic dance, spreading more and more debris throughout the space between New Terra and the Vrax fleet. Then, as suddenly as they had started, they stopped. They took up positions at 3 points around the fleet's formation, just sitting there. Waiting. Tactical assessment. Zarthok demanded. Unknown, Commander. This makes no strategic sense. They've scattered debris throughout the approach vector, but it's not enough to provide cover or pose a collision hazard. They're just sitting there. 3 ships against 600. They can't possibly believe they can fight us. Zarthok made a decision. Move the fleet forward. Bloquear de formation. We're moving into position around New Terra. If those 3 ships interfere, destroy them. Otherwise, ignore them. They're clearly trying to appear defiant for morale purposes. It's meaningless. The Vrax fleet began to move. 600 ships advancing in perfect geometric formation. A display of overwhelming force that should have broken any defender's will. The human ships did nothing. They just watched. The Vrax formation entered the debris field, and the universe exploded. The debris activated. 3,000 autonomous mines, each one no larger than a human fist, each one equipped with a small fusion charge and a primitive but effective targeting system. They had been dormant, cold, undetectable. Now they came alive all at once. The mines swarmed toward the Vrax fleet like angry insects. Vrax shields could stop most conventional weapons easily, but these mines were designed to exploit a specific weakness. They attached themselves to shield emitters, the external components that projected the protective fields, and then they detonated. Shield generators exploded across the Vrax formation. Ships that had been protected by energy barriers suddenly found themselves naked in space, and the mines kept coming, shields failing across all sections. We're under attack. The sensor officer's calm demeanor shattered. Commander, we've lost 80 ships. No, 90. The mines are targeting our shield arrays specifically. Zarthok stared at the tactical display in horror. His perfect formation was disintegrating. Ships were trying to maneuver, but they were too close together, designed for maximum visual impact rather than combat spacing. Ships collided. Explosions rippled through his fleet. All ships emergency scatter. Get clear of the debris field. But it was too late. The 3 human frigates chose that moment to strike. They accelerated to combat speed, and Zarthok realized with growing horror that they had been hiding their true capabilities. These were not patrol boats. They were hunter-killers, fast and deadly. They flashed through his disrupted formation, targeting the ships that had lost their shields, and they fought like nothing Zarthok had ever seen. They didn't maintain formation. They didn't follow predictable patterns. They struck, vanished, struck again from a different angle. They used the wreckage of destroyed Vrax ships as cover. They launched missiles that seemed to know exactly where his ships would try to dodge. They're hacking our tactical network, his communications officer shouted. They know our maneuvers before we execute them. How? How had humans learned to penetrate Vrax military encryption? How had they known exactly how to target their shields? How had they... The answer hit Zarthok like a physical blow. Humans had been studying galactic military systems for 300 years. They had been learning, observing, preparing. And the galaxy had assumed they were just curious merchants and engineers. All ships, full retreat. Get out of the debris field. Reform it. Commander. New contacts. Multiple human ships entering the system. Zarthok looked at the display. His blood, if he had blood, would have frozen. Dozens of new signatures were appearing at the edge of the system. No, not dozens, hundreds. Human warships, much larger than the frigates. Heavy cruisers, destroyers, carriers launching swarms of small attack craft. Where had they come from? Intelligence had said humans had maybe 200 patrol boats. This was a battle fleet. A real military force. Incoming transmission, his communications officer said weakly. It's broadcasting on all council frequencies. Put it through, Zarthok ordered, his voice barely functioning. A human face appeared on the display. An older man in a military uniform Zarthok had never seen before. The insignia identified him as a general, though humans supposedly had no active military above patrol level. This is General Marcus Webb of the United Human Space Navy, the man said. His voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. Fleet Commander Zarthok, you have attacked a human colony without provocation, without trial, and without honor. You came to our home expecting us to submit because you believed we were weak. You were wrong. The display split, showing footage of the battle. Burning Vrak ships, the destroyed formation, the human frigates moving through the chaos like wolves among sheep. For 300 years, humanity has lived by the galaxy's rules, Webb continued. We have been peaceful. We have been cooperative. We have been good neighbors. But you mistook our peace for weakness. You mistook our restraint for inability. That ends today. More human ships appeared on Zarthok's sensors. His fleet was trapped between the minefield and the approaching battle group. Ships were trying to form defensive positions, but the formation was shattered. Communication was compromised and panic was spreading. You came to our home, Commander Zarthok, Webb said, and now his voice carried an edge that made even Zarthok's crystalline form feel cold. Now face us. Learn what humanity is truly capable of when you threaten our people. And when you retreat, and you will retreat, take this message back to the Council. Humanity will not bow. We will not surrender. We will not accept unjust judgments. We are peaceful by choice, not by necessity. Remember that. The transmission ended. The human battle group opened fire. Zarthok watched his fleet die. The humans fought with tactics that were 300 years old for them but completely unknown to the Vraks. They used electronic warfare to blind his sensors. They used coordinated strike patterns that overwhelmed his ship's defensive systems. They used psychological warfare, broadcasting footage of destroyed Vraks vessels to break morale. And worst of all, they used restraint. They targeted weapons and engines, disabling ships rather than destroying them when possible. They were showing mercy, even in battle, which somehow made it more terrifying. They could have annihilated his entire fleet, but they were choosing not to. Commander, we've lost 368 ships. More are disabled and drifting. We can't win this. Zarthok knew it was true. He had brought 600 warships to intimidate peaceful colonists. Instead, he had sailed into a trap set by a species that remembered how to wage war. All ships, he said, his voice crystalline harmonics breaking with something that might have been shame. Retreat. Full retreat. Get out of this system. As his shattered fleet turned to flee, Zarthok looked at New Terra on his displays. The blue and green world sat peacefully in space, untouched. The colony was safe. The humans had won, and the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began in chaos. High Arbiter Zexthor tried to maintain order, but representatives were shouting over each other in a dozen different languages. The translation matrix struggled to keep up. Above them all, the main display showed footage from the Battle of New Terra, recorded by Vrak ships and human vessels alike. 600 Vraks warships had entered the system. 234 had returned, most of them damaged. 366 had been destroyed or captured. Not a single human ship had been lost. Ambassador Chen sat in the human section, her hands folded calmly in her lap, watching the chaos unfold. She had stopped trying to explain 2 hours ago. Now she simply waited for the council to exhaust itself. This is an act of war. War Master Krelnok's voice cut through the noise like a blade. His crystalline form glowed red with anger. Humanity has destroyed a council peacekeeping fleet. This cannot stand. Peacekeeping? Chen's voice was quiet, but something in her tone made everyone stop. She stood slowly. War Master, you sent 600 warships to attack a colony of 12,000 civilians. You gave us no trial. No negotiation. You didn't even ask for our side of the story before dispatching your fleet. Now you're calling it peacekeeping? You violated the sacred accord, another representative shouted. We followed every protocol. Chen shot back, her diplomatic calm finally cracking. We surveyed. We filed, we waited. No objections were raised. Then suddenly, 300 years after we joined this council, you decide our colony is illegal and send warships without even talking to us first. Tell me, councilors, which species would have accepted that? Silence fell. Several representatives looked uncomfortable. The Morpheus ambassador's tentacles twitched nervously. The Clith representative clicked softly to itself. High Arbiter Zexthor raised his arm for attention. Ambassador Chen, regardless of the circumstances, humanity has revealed military capabilities that were never declared to the Council. You have hidden installations, warships, weapon systems, all of which should have been registered according to Council regulations. Really? Chen looked around the chamber. Then I assume every species here has declared their full military capabilities? Every hidden installation? Every classified weapon system? She paused. Or does that regulation only apply to the species you don't consider dangerous? No one answered. Chen pressed on. For 300 years, humanity has been honest about our capabilities. We told you we had patrol boats, we did. We told you we had defense installations. We did, we never lied. We simply didn't tell you about contingency plans we hoped never to use. She looked directly at Krelnak. Just as I'm sure the Vrax Collective has contingency plans you've never shared with the Council. This is different, Krelnak insisted. You have been building a war fleet in secret. We have been building a defense fleet, Chen corrected. There's a difference. Every ship we activated was designed to protect human territory. We have not invaded anyone. We have not attacked anyone unprovoked. We defended our colony from an unjust assault. That is our right under Council law. The Council determines what is just. Krelnak's voice rose. Then the Council is tyrannical. The words came from an unexpected source. Elder Theros, the ancient representative of the Theros Empire, had risen from its seat. The entire chamber fell silent. The Theros Elder had not spoken in a council session for over 1,000 years. It simply voted and observed, until now. Elder Theros? High Arbiter Zexthor's voice was respectful but confused. You wish to speak? I wish to speak truth, the Elder said. Its voice was like stone grinding against stone, ancient and implacable, a truth that this council has ignored for too long. Humanity is not what you believe them to be. The Elder moved to the center of the chamber. Every eye followed it. Chen felt her heart rate increase. She had no idea what the Theros Elder was about to say. Before humanity joined the galactic community, my empire sent scouts to observe their world. This is our tradition. We observe species before contact to understand them. What we found disturbed us so deeply that we classified the information at the highest level and recommended against contact for at least another 1,000 years. Shocked murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Elder continued. We observed Earth during what humans call their world wars. We watched as they nearly destroyed themselves with atomic weapons. We documented their capacity for violence, their tribal nature, their terrifying ability to organize into groups and fight with absolute dedication. The Elder turned slowly, its ancient eyes sweeping across the council. We classified humanity as persistence predators. Do you understand what that means? No one answered. The Elder explained. Most species in this galaxy evolved as prey animals or social herbivores. You, it pointed at the Clith representative, evolved from herd insects. You, it indicated a Morpheus ambassador, evolved from filter feeders. Even the Vrax evolved from crystalline organisms that absorbed minerals peacefully. But humans evolved from hunters. Their ancestors tracked prey for days, wearing them down through sheer determination. They learned to work in groups, to plan, to adapt. And most terrifyingly, they learned to kill creatures much larger and stronger than themselves through cleverness and cooperation. The Elder's voice grew heavier. We watched them fight wars that killed millions. We watched them recover and grow stronger. We watched them reach the atomic age while still divided into competing nations. They aimed weapons at each other that could have sterilized their planet. And they chose not to fire them. Do you understand? They had the power to destroy themselves, and they chose restraint. Not because they were weak, but because they were wise. Chen felt tears forming in her eyes. She had not expected this. The Elder continued. When humans reached the stars and asked to join the galactic community, my empire debated for decades. Finally, we decided to allow it. But we watched. Always watched. And what we saw was remarkable. Humans adapted to peace. They chose cooperation over conquest. They became the traders, the diplomats, the engineers you all know. And you all assumed that this was their nature. You forgot that they chose it. You forgot that peaceful and harmless are not the same thing. The Elder turned to face Krelnak directly. War Master, you sent 600 ships to attack a human colony. You expected them to surrender because they always have been peaceful. But you made a critical error. You threatened their families. You threatened their homes. And humans, War Master, are a tribal species. They will die to protect their tribe. It is in their DNA. It is what carried them from caves to stars. Krelnak's crystalline form had gone pale. The Council? The Council had the right. The Council had the power. The Elder corrected. Right and power are not the same thing. This is a lesson the galaxy should have learned long ago. Power without wisdom is tyranny, and humanity has just reminded us all of this truth. High Arbiter Zexthor spoke carefully. Elder Theros, what are you suggesting? I am suggesting that the Council made a grave error. We attacked humanity without just cause, without proper process, because we assumed they were too weak to resist. We were wrong. And now we must decide. Do we escalate this conflict and learn exactly how dangerous cornered humans can be? Or do we admit our mistake and seek peace? The chamber erupted again, but this time the tone was different. Fear had entered the equation. Representatives were pulling up data on their personal displays. Intelligence reports were being shared. Chen could see them discovering what she and the military had known all along. Humanity had been preparing for this possibility for 300 years. According to this analysis, a Morpheus representative said slowly, humanity has over 400 military installations we were unaware of. They have thousands of ships in reserve. They have weapon systems based on technologies we don't recognize. How? How did we not know? Because we did not want to know, the Elder said simply. We wanted to believe they were harmless. It was more comfortable that way. They could threaten the entire council, another voice said, panic creeping in. No, Chen stood again. We could not, and we would not. Humanity does not seek conquest. We never have. But we will not bow to unjust force. That is the message General Webb sent, and it is the truth. We want peace. We want cooperation, but we demand respect. Respect? Krelnak's voice was bitter. You've killed thousands of Vrax warriors. Your warriors attacked our civilians, Chen replied coldly. And if you check the casualty reports carefully, War Master, you'll find that General Webb ordered his forces to disable ships when possible, rather than destroy them. We could have annihilated your entire fleet. We chose mercy. That should tell you something about our intentions. The High Arbiter raised his arms for silence. The Council must vote. The Vrax Collective demands authorization to mobilize their full military fleet, 15,000 warships, to respond to humanity's aggression. All in favor? Chen's heart sank. 15,000 ships. Even humanity's hidden fleet could not stand against that. The vote began. The Vrax voted yes, of course. Several client species who depended on Vrax protection voted yes. But then something unexpected happened. The Clith representative voted no. We cannot support this, the insectoid ambassador said. The initial action was unjust. To escalate further would be madness. The Morpheus ambassador abstained. This matter requires more deliberation. 3 more species abstained. 2 voted against. The chamber was dividing. Chen realized with a start that the Battle of New Terra had done more than just save the colony. It had shattered the Council's unity. Species were no longer willing to blindly follow the Vrax Collective's lead. The vote ended. 12 in favor, 5 against, 8 abstentions. The motion passed, but barely. And the abstentions were meaningful. Those species were refusing to commit to war against humanity. The authorization is granted, Zexthor announced, but his voice carried no satisfaction. War Master Krelnak, you may mobilize the full Vrax armada. However, he paused, looking around the fractured chamber. However, I strongly suggest that diplomacy be attempted first. Ambassador Chen, is humanity willing to negotiate? Chen considered. She knew what Webb would say. She knew what the human government would want. But she also knew that 15,000 Virax warships could do terrible damage even in defeat. War would cost lives on both sides. Humanity is always willing to negotiate, she said carefully. But we have conditions. First, New Terra must be recognized as a legitimate human colony. Second, the Council must establish a proper legal process for disputes that includes the right of defense before any enforcement action is taken. Third, humanity will be granted a permanent seat on the Council with full voting rights, not just observer status. Impossible, Krelnak shouted. You cannot make demands after attacking a Council fleet. We can, Chen replied. Because you need this war to end much more than we do. Your fleet is already damaged. Your people are afraid. And all of you know that if you push humanity into a corner, we will fight with everything we have. We will fight with the desperation of a species that has survived every disaster our homeworld threw at us. We will fight with the creativity of a species that went from wooden clubs to starships in 10,000 years. We will fight with the determination that carried us through ice ages and plagues and wars that should have ended us. And we will not stop until you leave our people alone." The chamber was silent. Chen looked around at the assembled representatives. She saw fear in many faces. But she also saw something else. Respect. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. They would not make that mistake again. "I recommend a recess," Elder Theros said into the silence. "Let us all consider carefully what has been said here. War with humanity would be costly for everyone. Perhaps fatally so. The Vrax believe they can win with overwhelming force. But I wonder, do any of you truly want to test that belief? Do you want to find out what desperation will make humans capable of?" No one answered. The High Arbiter called for a recess. As the representatives filed out, Chen remained seated. She pulled out her communicator and sent a short message to General Webb. "Council is fracturing. Vote for war passed, but barely. Recommend we prepare for either outcome." They're afraid. That's good. Fear breeds caution, but it also breeds mistakes. Webb's response came quickly. "Understood. Battle Group Orion is ready. Another 20 battle groups are mobilizing. If they come for us, we'll be ready. But Chen, if we can avoid more bloodshed, that would be better. We've made our point. Now let's see if they're smart enough to accept it." Chen looked out at the stars beyond the council chamber. Somewhere out there, human ships were preparing for war. Somewhere out there, Vrax commanders were assembling the largest fleet in their history. And somewhere in between, people on both sides were hoping that wisdom would prevail over pride. She had no idea which side would win that battle. But she knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. The peaceful traders and diplomats had revealed their true nature. Not conquerors, not warmongers, but survivors, defenders, warriors when they needed to be. And the galaxy was still trying to decide what that meant. The Vrax Armada gathered at Proxima Gate like a storm preparing to break. 15,000 warships, the largest military fleet assembled in galactic history. Fleet Marshal Dexthar commanded from his massive flagship, the Universe's Order. He had studied the recordings from New Terra 100 times. He had analyzed human tactics. He had prepared countermeasures. He would not make the same mistakes Fleet Commander Zarthok had made. The humans had won at New Terra through surprise and deception. They would not have that advantage again. Dexthar's fleet was ready for their tricks. They had deployed sensor nets that could detect inactive mines. They had implemented new communication protocols to prevent hacking. They had studied human military history, all of it publicly available, the humans having never hidden their violent past. What Dexthar saw in that history both fascinated and terrified him. The humans had fought wars that killed millions. They had invented weapons of such terrible power that they nearly destroyed themselves. But they had also shown remarkable adaptation, learning from every defeat, improving after every battle. They were, as the Theros Elder had said, persistence predators, and now those predators had awoken. "Marshal, long-range sensors are detecting the human fleet." His tactical officer's voice was steady, professional. "They're not running. They're waiting for us." Dexthar looked at the tactical display. The humans had positioned their fleet at Proxima Gate itself, the strategic choke point that controlled access to human space. Intelligence said they had maybe 2,000 ships. Against 15,000, it should be no contest. But Dexthar had learned to distrust should be where humans were concerned. Formation status? All ships in position, Marshal. Defensive grid is active. Communication jammers are deployed. We're ready for their electronic warfare tactics. Good. Dexthar studied the human fleet's formation. They were not using standard galactic patterns. Instead, they had arranged themselves in layers with smaller ships in front and larger vessels behind. It reminded him of something he had seen in human military history. What had they called it? Defense in depth. Marshal, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. It's on all frequencies. They want us to hear it and put it through. General Marcus Webb appeared on the display. He looked older than in his previous broadcast, tired. But his eyes were sharp and determined. Fleet Marshal Dexthar, I am General Marcus Webb. I command the Human Defense Forces at Proxima Gate. Before this goes any further, I want you to understand something. We know you have 15,000 ships. We know you believe you can win through overwhelming force. You might be right. But victory will cost you dearly. Is that cost worth it? Dexthar listened silently. Webb continued. Your species has been at peace for centuries. Your warriors are brave, but they have never experienced real war. War is not glorious. It is not clean. It is horror and death and sacrifice. My people remember this. We spent thousands of years learning it. We know the price, do you? My forces are ready to enforce the Council's will, Dexthar responded. You have one chance to avoid bloodshed. Stand down. Accept the Council's judgment. Your colony will be dismantled, but no more lives need be lost. Webb's expression did not change. Marshal, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen if you attack. First, you'll encounter our forward defense line. You'll destroy it. We know you can. But it will cost you 1,000 ships. Then you'll push through to our main battle line. You'll break it eventually, but it will cost you 3,000 more. Then you'll face our reserves and our planetary defenses. You might win, but by the time you reach Earth, you'll have lost 10,000 ships, maybe more. And then you'll have to occupy human space. 300 systems, billions of angry humans who know how to make weapons and are very, very good at guerrilla warfare. How long can the Vrax Collective sustain those losses? How long before your people start asking why they're dying over a bureaucratic dispute? Dexthar felt cold certainty settle into his crystalline core. Webb was not bluffing. The human general was laying out exactly what would happen, confident that the truth was terrible enough to make his point. You're threatening genocide, Dexthar said. No, Webb replied. I'm explaining the consequences of your choices. Genocide would be if we came to Vrax space and attacked your worlds. We have no intention of doing that. But if you come here, if you attack our people, we will defend ourselves with everything we have. That's not a threat. It's a promise. A warning. Turn back, Marshal. Go back to the Council. Tell them humanity will negotiate, but we will not surrender. That is your path to peace. There is no path to peace through my fleet. Only death. The transmission ended. Dexthar stood in silence. Around him, his officers waited for orders. He thought about honor, about duty, about the Council's orders, and he thought about the 10,000 Vrax who might die in the next few hours. Marshal? His tactical officer prompted. Dexthar looked at the human fleet on his display. 2,000 ships against his 15,000. Impossible odds. But the humans were not retreating. They were ready to fight, ready to die, and somehow that made them more terrifying than if they had fielded 15,000 ships of their own. Because Dexthar understood something now. The humans had been peaceful for 300 years, not because they could not fight, but because they knew the cost of fighting too well. They had experienced wars that nearly destroyed them. They knew what violence meant, and they had chosen peace anyway, until the Council had forced their hand. Marshal, we're awaiting your orders. Should we advance? Dexthar thought about his people, about the Vrax Collective's long history. They had been warriors once, long ago. Then they had evolved past violence, built a civilization on law and order. They had forgotten what war really meant. But the humans remembered, and they were about to teach the galaxy a lesson in blood unless he stopped it. Marshal, the tactical officer's voice was urgent now. Dexthar made his decision. Send a message to General Webb. I want to negotiate. Face to face. On neutral ground. No weapons, no ships. Just him and me. If he agrees to talk, we hold position. If he refuses, he paused. Then we attack, and may the ancestors forgive us all. The message was sent. For 3 minutes there was no response. Then Webb's face reappeared on the display. Marshal Dexthar, I accept your offer. There's a small station at the edge of the neutral zone. We can meet there in 1 hour. Come alone. I'll do the same. Let's see if we can end this without more killing. 1 hour later, Dexthar stood in a small observation room on a trading station that normally serviced merchant ships. General Webb entered from the opposite door. They faced each other across a simple table. Behind Dexthar, through the viewport, his massive fleet hung in space like a field of stars. Behind Webb, the human defense fleet waited, small but defiant. Thank you for agreeing to talk, Webb said. He sat down slowly like a man carrying a heavy weight. I am not certain my superiors will approve, Dexthar admitted. But I command this fleet, and I will not lead them into a slaughter without exhausting every alternative. That's wise. Webb leaned forward. Marshal, neither of us wants this war. I certainly don't. I've studied military history my entire life. I know what happens when armies clash. The winners write the history books, but everyone loses something. The question is, can we find a way out? The Council has issued clear orders. Your colony must be dismantled. The Council issued unjust orders based on a law we did not violate, Webb countered. Marshall, be honest with me. Do you truly believe New Terra was illegal? Or does the Council simply want to make an example of us because we're new and weak and therefore safe targets? Dexthar was silent for a long moment. Then he said, I am a soldier. I follow orders, but I have read your colonization filing. It was thorough, proper. If the Council had objections, they should have raised them during the waiting period. They did not. So perhaps there is some merit to your grievance. Then help me find a solution, Webb said. You're a soldier. So am I. We both know that winning a war is not the same as achieving your objectives. Even if you break through my fleet, even if you occupy human space, you'll spend decades fighting insurgents. You'll turn humans from peaceful neighbors into implacable enemies. Your species will be tied down occupying our territory, while other species grow stronger. Is that what the Vrax Collective wants? Eternal war with a species that refuses to quit? What do you propose? Dexthar asked. Webb pulled out a data pad. Terms. First, New Terra is recognized as legitimate. The Council admits its error. Second, you withdraw your fleet. No more threats of force. Third, humanity and the Vrax Collective negotiate a formal treaty of mutual respect. We agree to defend each other's interest when reasonable. Fourth, the Council establishes a proper legal process so this never happens again. And fifth, he paused. Fifth, we both work to prevent this conflict from destroying the galactic community. Because if we fight Marshall, other species will take sides. The Council will fracture. Everything that's been built over millennia will collapse. Neither of us wants that. Dexthar considered. These terms require me to admit the Council was wrong. My superiors will not easily accept that. Then convince them, Webb said. Tell them the truth. Tell them that humanity will fight to the last ship, the last soldier, the last civilian if necessary. Tell them that we're not bluffing. Tell them that victory over us will be so costly that the Vrax Collective will be crippled for generations. And then tell them there's another option, peace with honor. We both step back. We both acknowledge errors. The Council reforms. Everyone moves forward. And if they refuse, if they order me to attack regardless, Webb's face hardened. Then we fight. And I make good on every warning I've given you, Marshall. I have 20 more battle groups in reserve. I have weapon systems we haven't shown yet. I have 3 billion humans who will volunteer to fight if you invade our space. You'll win battles, but you'll lose the war. Because humans don't quit. It's not in our nature. We'll fight you until you leave or until we're all dead. And I promise you the cost will be more than your civilization can bear. Dexthar looked at the human general. He saw no bravado there, no false confidence. Just grim determination and the terrible certainty of someone who had done the math and accepted the cost. I need to consult with my superiors, Dexthar said finally. Take all the time you need, Webb replied. But Marshall, please consider carefully. This moment right here, right now. This is where we decide if the galaxy continues on its path toward cooperation and progress, or if we slide back into the dark ages of endless war. The choice is ours. Let's choose wisely. Dexthar returned to his flagship. He opened a secure channel to the Vrax Collective's High Council. For 3 hours, he argued. He presented intelligence reports. He showed casualty projections. He explained what would happen if they attacked. And then he played Webb's words back to them. Peaceful by choice, not by necessity. Remember that. The High Council deliberated. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they sent their response. Marshal Dexthar, you are authorized to negotiate. Seek terms that preserve our honor, but avoid catastrophic losses. The Council's unity is already fracturing. We cannot afford to destroy it entirely over one colony. Dexthar returned to the station. Webb was waiting, looking like he had not slept. My superiors have authorized negotiations, Dexthar said. But they have conditions. The Vrax Collective must not appear weak. We need guarantees that humanity will not seek territorial expansion, and we need the Council to acknowledge that both sides made errors, not just the Vrax. Webb nodded slowly. I can work with that. The Council investigation was flawed. We can acknowledge that. Humanity has no interest in conquest, we just want to be left alone to grow. And as for appearance, how about this? The Vrax Collective and humanity jointly propose council reforms. We present it as both sides working together to improve the system. That way you're not retreating, you're leading progress. That might work. Dexthar felt something he had not expected. Relief. They might actually end this without more bloodshed. I'll need detailed proposals. And Marshal Webb! I need to know. Your reserves. Your hidden weapons. Were they real, or were you bluffing? Webb smiled faintly. Does it matter? You believed me. That was enough. It matters to me. I need to know if I made the right choice. Webb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, everything I told you was true. Every reserve. Every weapon system. Every threat. I was not bluffing, Marshal. But I'm glad we never had to prove it, because the cost would have been terrible for both our peoples. They worked through the night, drafting proposals. By morning, they had a framework. New Terra would be recognized as legitimate. Both species would acknowledge errors in the process. The Council would implement new legal procedures, and humanity would be granted a permanent council seat, not as a reward for military might, but as a recognition that they had become too important to be treated as junior members. The proposals went to the Council. The debate lasted a week. The Vrax Collective initially resisted, but Dexthar's reports about human capabilities had shaken them. The Council was fracturing. More species were refusing to support war against humanity. Finally, with the Theros Elder casting the deciding vote, the reforms passed. 1 year later, Ambassador Chen sat in the council chamber in a new seat, one of 13 permanent positions. The Council of 12 had become the Council of Equals. Humanity had earned its place not through conquest but through the willingness to defend itself. General Webb stood at Proxima Gate, watching as Vrax trade ships passed through peacefully. The massive fleets had dispersed. The crisis had passed, but no one had forgotten the lesson. On New Terra, Governor Reeves watched her grandchildren play in gardens that had almost become battlefields. The colony thrived now, its legitimacy unquestioned. More humans were emigrating every day. The future looked bright, and across the galaxy, every species had learned something important. Humanity was peaceful. They preferred trade to war. They sought cooperation over conflict, but they were not weak. They were not helpless. They were survivors who had climbed from caves to stars, and they had done it by refusing to surrender, refusing to quit, refusing to be broken. Webb had said it best in his final communication to the Council. You came to our home. We faced you, not because we wanted to fight, but because we had no choice. We hope we never need to do it again, but if we must, we will, because that's what humans do. We survive, we adapt. We protect our own. Remember that and we'll all be fine. Forget it and you'll learn it again the hard way. The galaxy remembered, and humanity found its place among the stars. Not as the weakest species, but as equals. Respected, valued, and never again underestimated. Because peaceful and harmless were not the same thing. And the galaxy had learned the difference at Proxima Gate, where 2,000 human ships had faced 15,000 Virax warships and won without firing a shot. Won because the threat of what they could do was enough. The wolves had awoken, shown their teeth, and then chosen peace. That more than anything else was what made them truly dangerous. They had the power to destroy, and the wisdom not to use it unless absolutely necessary. That was humanity's greatest strength, and the galaxy would not forget it.